December 1985, a hunter was cautiously trekking through the woods of the Chattahoochee National Forest in northern Georgia. His objective was to stalk and hunt a deer, which he had been tracking for over a mile. However, as he continued to stealthily move forward, the absence of any signs of the deer made him doubt the success of his mission. But despite these frustrations of his, he nevertheless would continue to progress with the hunt, which is when he would just moments later notice a clearing up ahead. But to his shock and surprise, it wasn't a deer he saw in the clearing. Instead, it was a colossal American black bear. Though black bears are typically shy, the hunter knew that startling one could result in a potentially lethal attack. Equipped with this knowledge, he would then quickly hide behind a rock, gripping his rifle tightly as he began scheming his escape plan. His initial thought was to quietly retreat without the bear noticing him. But then the hunter would recall just how noisy the dry leaves he'd been stepping on were, as they made loud crunching noises under his feet while he traversed the wood, and he was concerned that his footsteps could alert the bear to his presence if he tried to walk out of the predicament unassumingly. At this point, he briefly considered standing up and shooting at the bear with his deer hunting rifle, but he knew it wasn't powerful enough to take down a black bear on time, if at all. Moreover, he knew that he was at risk of being attacked and mauled by the bear before he could even get a chance to subdue it. As he pondered his next move, he noticed something peculiar. He hadn't heard the bear for quite some time. And typically, of course, bears are noisy animals whose breathing alone can be heard from a distance. As moments went by, the hunter would grow more and more suspicious of the silence, which is when he stood up and, as quietly as possible, peers out from the rock he was hiding behind into the clearing. To his relief, he saw that the bear's body had been laying lifeless on the ground and was slumped forward in an awkward position. The hunter was so relieved by this sight that he almost burst into laughter, which is when, without hesitation, of course, he emerges from his hiding spot and makes his way through the brush to get a better view of the bear. As the hunter stood over the young bear, he couldn't help but notice that something was off. The bear was obviously way too young to have died of natural causes, yet he couldn't see any visible injuries, nor did it look malnourished. It literally seemed to him as if this bear had simply dropped dead for no apparent reason. However, the hunter didn't dwell on this for long, and instead tried to in his mind piece together the most logical explanation for the bear's death. Little did he know that the real reason for its demise was far from logical. To uncover the truth of what happened, we have to go back to September 10th of 1985, when two pilots were flying their Cessna over northern Georgia. They would intercept a radio message intended for other pilots, discussing how their plane was going to be followed. Knowing the risks of getting caught, the main pilot of the Cessna instructed his co-pilot they would have to jump out of the plane. He then set the plane to fly on autopilot until it ran out of fuel or crashed. He then motioned for the co-pilot to follow him into the main cabin where their luggage was stored. The co-pilot, in a state of confusion and panic, complied, and as the men climbed over the front seats, they then began strapping parachutes onto their luggage while the main pilot instructed the co-pilot to open the side door of the plane. With the door open, a rush of cold night air and howling wind would fill the cabin, making it difficult for the pilots to communicate. The main pilot then proceeded to push the luggage out of the plane, with the co-pilot joining in. Once all the luggage was out, the main pilot handed a parachute to the co-pilot and gestured for him to put it on. As the co-pilot struggled to put on the parachute, the main pilot donned his own and suddenly pushed the co-pilot out of the plane. The main pilot would then jump out after him, leaving the plane on autopilot to eventually crash in a suburb of Knoxville, Tennessee, about 5 hours later. Meanwhile, an 85-year-old man named Fred Myers, who suffered from Alzheimer's disease, woke up before sunrise as part of his daily routine.
Confused by the Medicare ABCs? If you have Original Medicare, then you have Parts A and B. Have you considered Part C? Medicare
Routine was key in helping him manage his Alzheimer's symptoms, especially in the morning when he would feel much more